Hello friends, I'm Mahesh Bhatt. For we filmmakers, Rajasthan has been an attractive destination for its rich cultural heritage, colors and cheerful people. The real life in Rajasthan, however, is very different from the real life that I've seen for myself recently. Rarely we dream merchants have made an attempt to understand the pain, misery and plight of the poor in Rajasthan and the processes that have been exploiting them so ruthlessly. This burning flame is in memory of Dhula Kher, an unfortunate victim of drought and government apathy in Rajasthan. Forced to migrate in search of employment, Dhula fell prey to an unscrupulous contractor in Gujarat. Dhula was locked in a room for 4 days and his wife was repeatedly raped by the contractor. Dhula was brutally murdered and his mutilated body was later recovered from a jungle in Rajasthan. Dhula's life could have been saved if the Rajasthan government had started its drought relief program in time. While the media for the past 3 months has been full of reports on people's plight in wake of continuing drought, the Rajasthan government says it will start its relief work on 15th of January 2001. The delay in initiating the relief work has been proving fatal to a number of families like Dhula Kher. Stories of exploitation of migrant workers are pouring in. The worst affected are women, as some of them have even taken to prostitution to eke out a living for themselves. The government in Rajasthan maintains that people migrate because they get higher wages. But the people who have come back narrate harrowing tales about their experience. They are even robbed of their self-respect and dignity.
कानोता गांव से लोग पलायन पर गए हुए थे। उनके साथ में अपनी लड़की थी, 16, 17, 18, 19 साल की लड़की थी। उस लड़की को लोग अपने वहाँ काम पर से ही उठा के लेके चले गए, पलायन पर से ही। और उस बेचारा को कुछ भी पता नहीं लगा उस लड़की का कि मेरी लड़की को कौन ले गया, क्या ले गया।
2-3 साल से अकाल पड़ रहा है, इसलिए जो ये मजदूरी के लिए मतलब बाहर जाए, लेकिन यहाँ मजदूरी थी तो ऐसा हमारी ये घटना नहीं होती है।
मजदूरी न टूटना ले अकेले बन से बाहर, लेकिन पास आया कुछ नहीं मजदूरी मिलती। बोले बड़ा कोई भी कह रहे तो उन्हें मजदूरी न ले आया, इन बोले जाइए साला विदाई बुढ़ा कहेंगे भूखा देश ना आया, साला हारा से भूखा कह रहे मादर चलती है डिंडा पर।
जैसे अगर हम यहाँ से लोगों को ले जाते हैं, सपन मान लो अगर ले जाते हैं तो गुजरात में यूँ बोलते हैं कि आप सरपंच हो तो हमारे पास क्यों लेकर आए, आपकी सरकार नहीं, आपकी सरकार मर गई है।
People have been migrating in panic. There is no one to look after this girl, Kaylee. Her entire family has migrated to a destination that nobody knows in the village. For many others, life has become extremely difficult. The battle of survival is on amidst extreme deprivation. The most traumatic feature of drought in Rajasthan is the delay in its declaration and an unpardonable tardiness of the state government in dealing with scarcity conditions. Whenever drought conditions become apparent, the Rajasthan government's first response is to wait for the Girdavari report on the situation of agricultural crop in the state. The Girdavari report becomes available on October 15, but till then, the government does virtually nothing to alleviate the suffering of the helpless people.
इस बार बारिश हुई नहीं तो गिरदावरी करने की मुझे नहीं लगता है कि कोई ज़रूरत थी, क्योंकि ये अगस्त से ही पता लग गया था कि इस साल है वो भयावह अकाल है, तो उसके बाद में गिरदावरी की कोई ज़रूरत नहीं रहती है।
इस बार के गिरदावरी के आंकड़े देख के ये लगता है कि पहले से ही निश्चित था कि इसको ज़्यादा नहीं मापना है, क्योंकि अगर आप इस साल की गिरदावरी और पिछले साल की गिरदावरी को देखेंगे, अगर तुलना करते हैं तो उसी गांव में पीछे ज़्यादा नुकसान दिखाया हुआ है।
It is nothing but a cruel joke on the people of Rajasthan that despite the full knowledge that the majority of farmers have not sown any crop, the state government needlessly waited for another Girdavri report for initiating the relief work. Did we really need another round of assessment in these villages when we knew the drought never left them? By prematurely closing down the relief work on 15 July 2000, the government only accentuated the suffering of the affected people, despite knowing that for many it is the only source of help.
माई बाप सरकार हमारे बहन वास्ते खोल रहा नहीं है, तो हमारे जीवन वास्ते रोटी नहीं है, कपड़ा नहीं है, गरीबी हालत में कोई एक नहीं है।
Stopping in mid-July was very premature. Some of the structures that were being supported by the government programme had only just started being built, and therefore they were never completed. These were structures which, had they been completed, would have enhanced the community's coping mechanisms.
In many places, it was a case of too little and too late.
4 दिन कोई काम, कोई 700 घरों की बस्ती के लिए काम है कि अरे काम कोई पार पड़ती सी के 4 महीना तक लोगों की पुकार बार बार चिल्लाता रहा, मन काम चाहिए, मैं गरीब लोग हाँ, मन काम चाहिए, कहीं कौन सुनेंगे। बार बार वीडियो कन गया, तहसीलदार जी कन गया, प्रधान जी कन गया, और सरपंच के कन तो रोज घेरो गाले रखो।
Whenever drought conditions become apparent, the state government looks towards the centre for calamity relief. And with this begins the game of political one-upmanship, allegations and counter-allegations.
I told Mr. Ashok, well, funds are not there, you're fighting between the centre and state government, but you see the plight of people staying over here. I know the central government have played a hell with us. Last year we asked 960 crore, they gave only 21 crore. This is second, This year we asked 1140 crore, they give 103 crore, then they gave another 15 crore. Total, 120 crore so far.
The Rajasthan government has already submitted a memorandum to the centre seeking a financial assistance of rupees 2,368 crores of rupees for drought relief. It is unlikely to get this amount as a central team that recently visited the state has recommended financial assistance of merely rupees 612 crores. The story this year is not going to be any different than that of last year, when the Rajasthan government demanded rupees 1,145 crores for drought relief, but it claimed to have received only rupees 103 crores. The state government held the paucity of funds responsible for inadequate relief to the people. But by 15 July 2000, when the relief work were closed, it claimed to have spent rupees 564 crores. It is not just the paucity of employment opportunities, but also the manner in which the government relief work is implemented that gives very little relief to the people. No wonder they feel cheated and outraged.
हमारी मजदूरी तो हमें कहे गवर्नमेंट तो कहे 60 रुपया प्रति दिन मजदूरी 60 रुपया प्रति दिन होना चाहिए, हमको मिली 10 रुपया प्रति दिन। मैं अगर 10 रुपया मिला तो हमको दो कलेक्टर पेज में ये हिसाब।
Like the government, the NGOs too in Rajasthan are often accused of a delayed response. There is no effective interface between the government and the NGOs in Rajasthan. In place of mutual coordination and cooperation, they share the feeling of mutual mistrust.
और से भी रात कार्य जगह जगह पर खोले हैं, लेकिन हमारी इतनी ड्यूटी नहीं है, वो तो सरकार की ड्यूटी है। हमारी तो ड्यूटी नहीं है कि हम सब लोग रात कार्य करें, तो फिर सरकार किस लिए है। फिर भी हम लोगों ने हमारे स्तर पर किया है, बहुत सारी जगह पर लोगों को संगठित भी किया है। सरकार ने मिनिमम वेज भी नहीं दिया, तो उनके लिए लोगों ने मना कर दिया आपदा लेने से। बहुत सारी जगह पर काम तो किया ही, लेकिन ये हमारी ड्यूटी नहीं है, ड्यूटी सरकार की है कि सरकार जनता से टैक्स लेती है। कोई एनजीओ तो टैक्स नहीं लेता है जनता से कि हम विकास का कार्य करेंगे।
The community participation in decision making and creation of community assets have been the salient features of NGO's intervention.
सीधे सीधे करीब 50,000 परिवार लाभान्वित हो रहे हैं हमारे पूरे परिवार के प्रयासों को लेकर के। और इसके साथ में और जुड़े हुए लोगों को देखें तो बहुत ज़्यादा हो जाएगी राशि और संख्या दोनों। अभी हम लोग जिन फंडिंग सोर्सेज से काम कर रहे हैं उन पे करीब हमारा अभी तक का बजट करीब 10 करोड़ रुपए का हो चुका है।
The role that NGOs can play, albeit significant with the communities with whom they're working, can only be a fraction of what the government programme can offer. And it was really very important for us to know what the government was planning to do, see the government's plans in order for us to target our much more limited resources in the most effective way.
The gravity of drought this year will be more severe than the past 30 years. Its fury will directly fall on the poor, especially the women, children and the elderly. Forget the agriculture production or fodder for cattle this year. Drinking water will emerge as the most acute problem for the people in almost entire Rajasthan. Even the city of lakes, Udaipur, has been facing a water crisis that it has never experienced before. Intensive exploitation of groundwater bodies for cultivation of fallow and marginal lands is taking a heavy toll on scarce resources in Rajasthan. The farmers have lost their crops for 3 successive seasons. They don't have any stock of food and fodder.
हम काश्तकार हैं, खेतों के काश्तकार हैं। भूख प्यास के मारे हम रेत निकालते हैं, गवर्नमेंट हमारी कोई सहायता नहीं करती। खेतों में बीज एक बार बो दिया, पानी नहीं देते हैं। पानी पीने के लिए महीने में 3 दिन पानी देते हैं। 3 दिनों से क्या है, कुंडी नहीं भरी थी है, गऊ है, आदमी है, काश्तकार है, पशु धन पशु वाला आदमी है, बहुत समस्या है।
11 महीने की 15 तारीख अशोक जी आयोगे, ना हमारे पास में पानी है, ना हमारे पास में कोई कचरा फूस है, कुछ नहीं है। मजदूरी करो तो देश छोड़ो तो भी पाकिस्तान टिपो, कुछ भी करो।
For the landless laborers, the continuous spell of drought is a period of unemployment. In the absence of adequate grass and fodder, nearly half of the cattle population has perished in the state in the last 3 years. This is having a crippling effect on millions of people whose economy is based on these cattle.
हमारे गांव में करीब 2000 से ज़्यादा भेड़ें मर गई है और करीब 200-300 गायें मर गई। अब ये जो है वो भी सब ऐसे ही पड़ी है, सब अध मरी है। जब 20 आदमी जाते हैं उसको खड़ी करते हैं, तब 10 मिनट खड़ी रहती है और जब आदमी वहाँ से दूर हो जाता है वापस गिर जाती है।
Whenever Rajasthan faces a drought, its brunt is usually borne by women and children. Children's diet becomes the first casualty of drought. In places of cereals, ghee, curd and vegetables, chili and roti become their staple diet. When there is not enough to eat, who can think of education? As the intensity of drought increases, children are taken out of schools and they can be seen working alongside with their parents at the construction sites or in dhabas in the nearby towns. During droughts, women can be seen walking miles and miles in search of that elusive drop of water. They toil for hours and hours under the scorching sun. When they go out to work, girls in the family take up the job of cooking and looking after their younger siblings. Ironically, the society in Rajasthan has always discriminated against women and girls.
लड़कियों को तो नहीं पढ़ाते क्योंकि ये तो पढ़ाई धन है, इसलिए बच्चों को लड़कियों को नहीं पढ़ाते हैं ज़्यादातर कि हमको तो ये कमा के नहीं देगी।
It is hardly surprising that 53 years after the country's independence, in 10,000 out of the total of 39,000 villages, the women literacy level has been less than 1% in Rajasthan. The development paradigm that was followed in recent years has made people even more vulnerable to droughts. Instead of relying on time-tested traditional coping mechanisms, the emphasis is being given to mega projects. Miles and miles long pipelines have been laid and large concrete structures were put in place without realizing where from the water will flow in them. The construction of the Indira Gandhi River Canal, instead of solving people's problems, has reduced large tracts of once fertile areas as wet desert. Waterlogging made these lands unfit for cultivation.
आज़ादी के बाद सरकार ने तय कर लिया कि कुछ चीज़ें सरकार ही करेगी। जैसे पीने के पानी की व्यवस्था सरकार ने अपने हाथ में ले ली। अब सरकार ने जब से अपने हाथ में ले ली व्यवस्था, तब से पानी के साथ जो रिश्ता लोगों का था, वो रिश्ता टूट गया।
The negative fallout of Indira Gandhi River Canal became apparent when just a couple of days' rainfall in June last year inundated a large number of villages. Even today, these villages are surrounded with the floodwater. The rich and influential elite in Rajasthan give precedence to consumption over conservation. The consequences of their irresponsible acts are not very difficult to trace. The unscientific and indiscriminate extraction in the ecologically sensitive Aravalli Hills is now seen as largely responsible for declining rainfall and repeated droughts in Rajasthan. During scarcity conditions, mines become the most attractive destination for the poor to get employment. The inflow of laborers in mines increases rather dramatically during droughts. In 1997-98, there were 2,29,067 workers who were employed in the mining industry in Rajasthan. But because of drought, next year the number rose to 3,33,272. Easy availability of employment opportunities notwithstanding, the environmental consequences of mining are proving disastrous for Rajasthan. A tragic outcome of this irresponsible act was seen last year when the historic Rajsamand Lake went dry for the first time in the last 350 years, and city dwellers were supplied water through good trains and tankers.
73 में आप देखिए जहाँ हम खड़े हैं, ये पूरा का पूरा पानी के अंदर डूबा था। पूरी की पूरी झील लबालब भरी हुई थी और ओवरफ्लो हो रही थी 73 में। वहाँ आज ये झील पूरी तरह खाली हो गई है और ये सारा का सारा मानव निर्मित कारणों से हुआ, क्योंकि जिस तरह का जो विकास हो रहा है, विनाशक विकास जिसे कहना चाहिए, कि आपका जंगल खत्म हो गया, पहाड़ के पहाड़ काटे जा रहे हैं मार्बल निकालने के लिए, और मार्बल यूनिट्स जगह जगह लग गए जो काफ़ी पानी खींचते हैं। इस समय में राजसमंद झील में 42 लाख लीटर पानी प्रतिदिन मार्बल यूनिट्स को चाहिए।
The greed of the influential people has not spared even the historical heritage of Rajasthan. Even the walls of a number of forts have been razed to the ground for extraction of marble. This historic fort of Kumbhalgarh, along with the adjacent Aravalli Hills, works as a buffer between the Thar Desert and some greener regions in Rajasthan. The continuous mining in the area is already knocking at the door of Kumbhalgarh Fort.
अगर ये अरावली ख़त्म हो चुकी तो इसके से जो जुड़ने वाले राज्य हैं, गुजरात हुआ, मध्य प्रदेश हुआ या राजस्थान हुआ, या राजस्थान के जो आसपास के जो डिस्ट्रिक्ट हैं वो सारे इसकी रेगिस्तान बढ़ने से सारा खत्म हो जाएगा।
The mining activities will have to be stopped immediately if the coming generations are to be saved from an environmental disaster. There is clearly need for a more people-friendly approach to dealing with drought in Rajasthan. Ironically, the state government is still guided by decades-old famine relief code for its relief work.
I would say that a particular attention should be made in thinking about revision of relief codes. Particular attention must be made to the situation of children, particularly to ensure prompt responses and to safeguard the educational interest and prospects of those children.
Drought should not be considered a calamity like an earthquake or a cyclone, especially in Rajasthan, where over 60% area receives less than 400 millimeter rainfall and large parts perennially suffer from extensive crop loss. Droughts are a regular climatic feature in Rajasthan. The solution of the problems related to drought are simple in Rajasthan. They have always been an integral part of the state's heritage. The conservation and revival of this heritage is the only way out. Unfortunately, nobody is realizing this.